Hey everybody, Lawrence here with 30 Basic Terrain coming at you with another one. This time go around, baby head pillars. Don't ask me why. I was just trying to think of something to make, and I was like, ooh, I have a bunch of these little baby heads. I think I'm going to use them. So, again, I'm going to run you through the process of how I got from a random pile of crap to this. But before we get started, I want to give a big thank you to my patrons. I can't appreciate you guys enough, especially when I was down for a couple months there. You stuck with me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, let's get to it. So I have these 5x5 tiles left over from the Demon Trophy project, but I want circles for the pillar bases, so grab my circle jig here on my Proxxon and just cut them into circles. Not too difficult, but that's a little too big for what I want, so I was like, I'm gonna trim them down by a little bit, just to get them to a size that I want. Not all that difficult or scientific, just keep cutting until I get where I want it. Of course, in the process, I decided I wanted to actually have two different size circles for the base. So I'm taking a couple of the ones I'd already trimmed down and trimming them even further. So it'll be like a small step for the circle base. Again, not really planning too much, just kind of eyeballing it and making sure, yeah, that works. I wanted to actually extend the use of these bases, and I didn't want bases as thick as that, so I'm just slicing them down to roughly a 1/4 inch thick, maybe a little less, but again, eyeballing it so I get more bases out of one chunk of foam. Here I'm just cutting out the rough shape of the pillar itself. Right, the foam I'm using is 2 inches thick, so it's roughly going to be a 2x2 inch square for the pillar itself. At least the rough shape is. And right now I just want to kind of trim off that finish edge because the manufactured edge is just kind of rough to try and work with when making terrain. So cut it off real quick and be done. Right now I'm just trimming down the pillars themselves, the height that I want, roughly, and also to make sure that when I stand them up that they'll sit flat to the bases that I'm making. Not a whole lot of thought and process, just trying to get it so it's easier for a later step. Now here I'm gluing the two different size circles together. Now I'm using some wood glue because that's what was within reach when I needed to glue them together. I didn't want to go with hot glue for this step because they were a little bit on the thin side and I didn't want to risk melting through, and I knew I had time to wait for them to dry, so no big deal. Now those two holes from where the circle jig helped me line it up so it's just perfect around and easy. I used the brush there to line them up and boom, perfect fit. Since I had such a perfect fit with the circles, I wanted to make sure that the pillars themselves fit on dead center, so I'm usually not this precise, but for this, I kind of want it to, so I'm just figuring out the exact center of the pillars themselves. Just draw lines from corner to corner and boom, you got your middle. Easy. Now, since I still have that hole through the bases, I want to be able to put the paintbrush handle through and guide it in easy enough. And so I need to make some holes there. And now, again, I'm using the wood glue just to slap on the bottom because I'm in no major rush, so hot glue is not necessary. And here I'm going to be using a paintbrush handle to guide it on into place. That's what the holes are for. And you'll never see the holes again unless you look underneath. Boom. Perfectly centered. Now I have all these baby heads back from when I was making the Necromancer Tower. I had these molds I got from Temu that I just kept using excess plaster to cast all these heads. And they've been sitting in my storage since then, and now I'm using them finally. Just use some wood glue, kind of eyeball the center in place or where how high I want it, and do it over and over and over again. Now that all the heads are on, it's time to just actually start messing this pillar up because I don't want a perfectly formed pillar. And it's just carving it away in bits and pieces until I get to where I'm happy with how it looks. And now the expensive number 2 sculpting tool pencil. I didn't want these bases to look like solid pieces. I wanted it to look like individuals, different multiple pieces of stone. So I'm just carving in some tile lines. Pretty quick, pretty simple. I'm using a lighter here just to kind of like melt the foam a little bit to get rid of all the hard edges. It's a much quicker way than sanding, which is a pain in the butt. Just make sure you rub the flame over relatively quick so it doesn't cause too many fumes. Make sure you got a fan going in the background so you don't get, breathe any of this in. Now, there are some relatively large gaps from where the baby head's actually attached. So I'm just using some black Milliput because it's what I had on hand and I didn't feel like going to the store to get regular Milliput. And I'm just using that to fill in some of the major gaps. It happens. These baby heads weren't cast with any real future thought. And I'm just, it's a quick, easy process. Just kind of smear it in to make it blend in. Now, I wanted to have, I don't know if you want to call them veins or whatever, but just some texture. So I'm using some hot glue here and just almost like veins, tendrils, or roots, or whatever. Just disgusting stuff. Going from the baby head to the pillar itself. And don't worry about, I'm just using black hot glue because it shows up easy on camera. That's the only reason. Now here I'm using some toilet paper and some watered down PVA glue, and I'm putting it around the outer edges of the face and the pillar, and where it attaches to the pillar. This will give it some extra texture because, just the veins that I put on themselves, to me, they just weren't enough. So I figured, well, this will give it a more wrinkly, nasty looking texture. I just put on the piece of toilet paper, brush on some watered down 50/50 watered down PVA, and put it off the side and let it dry, and you'll get some really nice, decent texture out of this. It's a pain in the butt, and it gets a little messy, but it's really not that hard. Here I'm using some tacky glue, and I'm painting on patches of glue where I can then add sand to, because I wanted to break. I didn't want it to be like perfectly smooth, and eventually I'm going to paint this sand up to look like dirt, just to break up the monotony of the gray. Because I don't know, this is what I prefer to do, so I like it. Looks good. so I'm going to do it. Now, you can use black Mod Podge for this step or any kind of black paint, but I have an airbrush, so I'm going to use it quick. I'm just black bombing the whole thing, just to primer it and give it a coat. I'm not worried about the strength right now because all the plaster from the heads and the melting of the foam I did gave it like a hard crust. So I'm just using straight up airbrush primer. Right now I'm just giving this a base coat in a dark blue gray. It's my go-to for stone. So, this is just trying to give it, a near like 90 to 100% coverage. I did actually water down the gray a little bit. But, you don't have to be neat with this. It's just slop it on, And to break up the gray, I'm doing like a kind of leopard spotting. I like to call it clown puke. Where it's just different colors on the base coat. Don't worry, it's not going to show up as like this. But, again, I like to call this clown puke because that's what it looks like when you're done this step. This will break up the monotony of the gray. And now I'm using a medium gray. I'm doing an overbrush over everything. And just I'm going for like 75, 85% coverage. Leaving all the recesses and whatnot. And you can already see that it's starting to cover up the clown puke. You know what? Forever now I'm calling it clown puke. But again, it'll get more subtle with each step. And while it'll still be there, it won't be obvious. And of course, now that I've gotten the overbrush step done, I'm giving it a quick dry brush with a light gray. This is just, I'm not like going for 100% coverage or anything with this. Just go over it real quick with a makeup brush, and then boom, done. Okay, now I'm going to be using a homemade dark brown wash and just slop it all over this thing, just to make it give it a dirty, grungy look. And don't worry, yes, it's going to darken it down quite a bit, but the next step will take care of that. Now that wash is dry, it looks properly nasty, but it's hidden some of the highlights and edging. So I'm going to go over it real quick and with the light gray again and just dry brush it again. You ask yourself, why did you bother dry brushing it with the light gray in the first time? Well, I don't know, because it's just my method. But actually, this is actually a lighter dry brush than the first time. This is only getting the highest lights, and I think it gives it like a dual highlighting. I don't know. Okay, now that all that's done, I want to paint those little sand spots up in dirt. Of course, I'm going to use a dark brown and try and give as much of coverage as I can. Again, I'm doing this just to break up the gray, so it's not just there, you know what I mean? This just gives a little more extra visual eye candy and interest. At least that's what I tell myself. Of course, now I'm going for a medium brown and giving it the dirt spots an overbrush. They haven't fully dried, so it's kind of, some of it's almost wet blending at this point. Most of it's dry, but there are spots where it isn't, but whatever. And of course I'm going with a tan or a light mocha and just dry brushing the dirt areas that highlight it all. Of course, this is something I like to do with doll builds. Just paint the eyes black, like a doll's eyes. But no, I always think it gives it like an extra creep factor to have the eyes completely blacked out. So again, I'm just using some straight up black paint and then just blacking out the eyes. Well, I'm using this because I couldn't find my gloss Mod Podge, which is what I would normally do over the black eyes, and just to give it a gloss look, so it makes it just a little bit more creepy than it was before to have a glossy eyeball. So again, I would normally use a Mod Podge gloss, but this worked. Now I wanted those veins to pop out a little bit more, almost like they were full of blood or something, but but I want it to look almost like faded paint, so I'm using some homemade pigment powder and just kind of brushing on where it goes, and then afterwards I'll mist it with some isopropyl alcohol to set it in place so it won't rub off. But again, pretty quick, pretty easy. Of course, I'm using some homemade pigment powder again. It's all my homemade pigment powder is made with soft pastel chalk, just scraped into a dust form. But this, is a dirty, dark brown to get dirty, just to give it. It has the dirty nastiness, and I put it in any places that might collect dirt and dust, and just also grime it up a little bit. I'll actually wind up covering, like along where the veins are and the cracks and crevices, anywhere there are two pieces of stone meet. Again, it's just to kind of grime it up and more visual pop and interest. And of course, afterwards, when I'm done doing all the griming of this pretty piece, yeah, pretty, I'll mist it down with some isopropyl alcohol just to lock it in place. Now, granted, when you use the isopropyl, you will lose a bit of dustiness, but you can compensate with that by going a little heavy-handed with how much you apply, and, it'll be fine. Once you do that a few times and get used to how much it changes, you can start making your own judgment if you do choose to use a method like this. This step actually smells good because I'm using some homemade moss paste, which is just a mixture of some flocking and some Italian herbs or mixed herbs from Walmart. So, while you're doing this, it actually smells good and kind of makes you hungry. But anyway, I'm just gluing it on in different places, and then once I get it on where, I'll sprinkle it with some yellow flocking just to, give it a little more. Again, everything's visual interest, as you can see. I'm actually pretty happy with how these turned out. Creepy, yeah, but that's my goal. And apparently, I have a demented mind. I've been told that more than once. I don't know, but I am happy with how these turned out. And these were just used from castings from something I used leftover plaster for. So always have extra castings and use them up for later. Hey everybody, if you made it this far, it means you watched the end, and as always, I greatly appreciate it. I can't thank you enough. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up. If you want to see more, click subscribe. I am back to making them, so if you want to get a hold of me directly, come check out the Discord. I'm linked somewhere, wherever. But
I would love to see what you guys make. If you make something sick and twisted like this, oh God, I would really love to see it. But again, I enjoy making these. Do I have a purpose for them? No. Did I want to make them? Yes. Again, guys, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. And thanks for sticking around me during that downtime I had. But as always, guys, remember, when you're making your terrain, no matter how sick and twisted it may be, the only person you got to worry about is you, because it's your terrain.